Trade policies, understanding how trade is shaped. If the President of the United States, which currently is President Donald Trump, he plays a central role in trade decisions by directing policy, imposing tariffs, and guiding negotiations to prioritize American economic interests. Then you have Congress. Congress plays a very key role in the U.S. trade by setting tariffs, approving the trade agreements, and overseeing tariffs policies through legislation. And then you have the U.S. Trade Representative, which is the Ambassador Jameson Greer. He leads the trade negotiation, enforces trade agreements, and advises the President on the trade policies. The U.S. trade policies is shaped by the President's direction, as you can see, and it's negotiated by the U.S. Trade Representative's Office and regulated and approved by Congress. The various agencies, when we talk about trade, you have a little over 8 agencies to make this actually happen, from a thought to actually legislation to actually implementation. So one of the first agencies you have is the Office of U.S. Trade Representatives, and that office has been very central in driving the message, the executive orders when it comes to the President. And then you have the Department of Commerce, and then we'll send a small definition and outline on each of the agencies for your viewers. And then you have the U.S. CBP, Custom Border Protection. Then you have the International Trade Commission and the U.S. Department of Treasury for perishable products or food products. You have the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. And then you have the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And then finally, you have the U.S. Department of State. These government agencies, they work together to negotiate agreements, they enforce trade laws, and facilitate the flow of goods. Trade is governed by 2 sections, Section 301 and Section 231. Excuse me, 232. In 1974, you had the U.S. Trade Act of 1974, which gives the United States government the opportunity to address unfair trade practices and promote fair international commerce. Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974, it authorizes the Department of U.S. Trade Representative to investigate and take action against foreign trade practices and unfair or discriminatory to the U.S. commerce. You have the IEEPA of 1977, which empowers the President to regulate foreign financial transactions and commerce during a declared national emergency. And lastly, you have Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. It allows for the national security-based tariffs. It authorizes the Department of Commerce to investigate imports and assess their impact to the national security, potentially imposing tariffs. So tariffs help protect the U.S. industries by addressing unfair trade practices and encouraging more balanced and fair global trade. New tariffs imposed on imports. You have some of the countries that have been at the forefront has been China, which has been imposed a 30% on all goods. Mexico, which is 25% on all goods. Canada, 25% on all goods. And Trinidad, 10% throughout the Caribbean. 10% pretty much has been standard. When it comes to steel, it's an additional 25% on all steel imported into the U.S. Auto and auto parts, 25% on all passenger vehicles and light trucks. Aluminum, 25% on all aluminum imports, including derivatives, and 10% on all aircraft parts. The U.S. has adjusted tariffs on goods from China, Mexico, Canada to protect the domestic industries and influence the trade relations. And again, this has been going up or down. It's been fluctuating quite a bit within the last 90 days. Yep. It's been fluctuating quite a bit. So again, it's always new executive orders. So we've been staying abreast of those orders through the U.S. Trade Representative Office to keep the importers and exporters, to keep them abreast of what's going on and all the various changes.
And I would just add that one of the reasons that we added the aircraft parts is we know that with Trinidad and Tobago, aircraft parts is a commodity that typically comes from the United States that goes into Trinidad. And so, again, we recognize where those commodities are and what the focus is, and we added that as part of the commodities that we're closely looking at, that Trinidad and Tobago imports on a regular basis.
When we talk about our top trading partners, when it comes to the Caribbean, Trinidad ranks as Port Miami's 4th trading partner in the Caribbean region, with about 6,218 TEUs, which equates to about $457,611,866 in value for fiscal year 2024. When we talk about Latin America, you have our top trading partners: Honduras, Dominican Republic, Guatemala, Colombia, and Peru as the top 5. And Port Miami's trade balance in this region is evenly split, 50% import and 50% export. And with Port of Miami, we charge for import and export, empties and loaded containers at Port Miami.
And I would just say that other than the Dominican Republic and Jamaica, those are the 2 that are from the Caribbean that are some of our top trading partners. As Sandra said, Trinidad ranks number 4 within the Caribbean itself. What you're looking at here is a mixture of Latin America and the Caribbean, and these are our top trading partners. One of the things that separates Port Miami from other ports in the state of Florida, which, by the way, the state of Florida has 16 ports, which is very unique. Most states have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 ports at the most. Port Miami is very unique in that we have 16 in total ports. Port Miami is the largest port of all the ports in the state of Florida. We are number 1. Across the country, we rank number 11, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But just so you understood, sort of our ranking vis-a-vis the state and vis-a-vis the country.
Okay, we did a comparison. We did a graph for the 10 years of trade with Trinidad. Cargo's numbers drastically spiked during the COVID 2021, as you can see on the chart, from a 12,515 TEU count, valued at $848 million in terms of value. You have Trinidad and Tobago consumers and businesses rapidly shifted to online shopping during the pandemic. So as you look at the graph from 2020, and then it dipped back on 2022, and then 2025 it kind of leveled back out at 6,218 TEUs, equating to $457.6 million.
Yeah, and this is not unusual. Every country we saw a spike, including at the port here. Our average TEUs, which is the metric that we use for containers, is generally somewhere between 1 to 1.3 million every year. And that year, 2020 to 2021, was definitely our peak. And so you saw this basically throughout the globe, an increase in e-commerce shopping, in online shopping, and that's why you see that spike there.
When we talk about our commodities as it relates to Trinidad, a fun fact, Carnival costumes are often shipped through Port of Miami. From Miami-based designers to Trinidad for Carnival in February, and from Trinidadian artisan to diaspora carnivals in the U.S., moving products to and from the Twin Island nation. So furniture has topped the list with 41 million worth of furniture. Port Miami supports Trinidad furniture market by exporting more than value 41 million worth of furniture, including the chairs, lighting fixtures, and prefab buildings. Prepared food came in as number 2 as it relates to commodities. Port of Miami played a key role in exporting a variety of prepared and packaged food to Trinidad and Tobago. Food varies, such as frozen appetizers and ready-to-eat snacks, to meet the country's growing demand. Next, you have the eggs. Eggs export to Trinidad and Tobago, including shell eggs, egg yolks, making the U.S. the largest supplier of these products. And last, we have the sweaters and the pullovers. Trinidad and Tobago consistently imported knit sweaters and pullovers from Port of Miami and account for approximately about 22 million of such garments, a key distribution hub for the Caribbean knitwear trade. Moving cargo to and from Trinidad via ocean to and from Miami puts high quality products into the hands of consumers.
And naturally, these are not the only these are not the only commodities that move to and from Trinidad and Tobago, but these are the ones that we highlighted as the ones that we see on a more frequent basis.
And when we talk about direct express service to and from the Twin Island, of course, Seaboard Marine is one of the major partners to and from this Point Lisa. Partner with Seaboard Port Miami offers a direct service to the key port of Point Lisa to move commodities to and from Trinidad and Tobago, average 5-day time frame turnaround. And so I want to pass over to my colleague Stanley Rigaud as he goes elaborate more on shore power. Excuse me, nearshore.
Nearshore. Yeah. So I think this is a good transition in terms of how do we continue to see more growth with Trinidad and Tobago, and I think the opportunity lies in the nearshoring opportunity. Obviously, we talked a little bit about some of those commodities that you guys typically import and export to and from Miami, but nearshoring is really something that has been evolving over the last few years. We've seen a lot of companies that are looking to do trade in a more regional aspect, and so we encourage that because, as you all know, during the pandemic, I think there was too much of reliance on China, and so we are looking for our partners to be that nearshore for us, where we can outsource trade locally, more, I would say more regionally, and so nearshoring is huge. Is huge. The other thing to sort of keep in mind regarding nearshoring is that obviously transit time is something that we're looking at very closely when it comes to nearshoring. Some has talked about 4 to 5 business days in terms of ocean transit. That's really important. Whereas with most products that are coming out of China or anywhere in the ASEAN markets, or even Europe for that matter, you're talking somewhere between 14 and 28, 30 days. So it's a huge opportunity from a transit time for nearshoring with Trinidad and Tobago. We're also laser focused on workforce and whether or not that there's the country has the sort of talent and talent infrastructure, workforce infrastructure, how you're upskilling. So we look at that in terms of opportunities for nearshoring. When companies come to us and they ask us about what countries do we think is could be a good candidate for nearshoring, oftentimes
Hi guys, sorry to interrupt. Apparently there's some people in the waiting room and you guys have to let them in because you're now the host.
Okay.
So if you could just check on the machine and see if there's anyone to be let in, we'd be grateful.
Sharing,
sorry about that.
I let them in.
Pardon me?
As I took back the whole sharing.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay.
Okay, so going back to the topic of nearshoring, is it on? Do they have control or do we have control?
You guys seeing the PowerPoint?
We should be able to share summaries.
Okay. How about now?
Coming up blank.
Okay, let me try it again. How about now?
Still the same.
Maybe it might be a good idea for them to take control of the PowerPoint.
Try again. Try again one more time.
Okay. Yeah, you want to try on your end?
Share from my side.
Since you have the presentation, why don't you control it from your end, and we'll just let you know when to move to the next slide.
Okay. Give me 1 second.
Let us know when you're ready.
Is everyone seeing that? Unless, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see. Well, I don't know if it's your screen or our screen.
Yes, I see it.
To the starting slide.
Yeah, keep going. I'll tell you when to stop. Right there. Correct. Perfect. No, go back, Nishant. One more. Yes. There we go.
Okay. So, so the idea for this slide is, again, is that there's a huge opportunity for nearshoring for Trinidad and Tobago, and some of the reasons that we think it's such a great opportunity is because obviously there's a huge Trinidadian community here in South Florida, in Miami and Broward in particular. The culture here is it's a mix of Latin and Caribbean culture. And so when companies come to us, whether it's from Europe, from Latin America, from Asia, and they're asking about opportunities for nearshoring, for us, it's important that we share with them opportunities that are available in Trinidad and Tobago as well. So these are some of the things that we look at when we look at how to make Port Miami strategically located near Trinidad and Tobago to represent a location for nearshoring. Next. All right, and part of the reason why that's important is because, as you can tell from the screen, from the slide here, with Port Miami, we can reach over nearly 400 million people when you consider all of our reach in terms of, you know, our ability to reach consumers within 1 to 4 days, whether we're talking in Latin America, the Caribbean, or within our own purview, that's a reach of about 400 million people. 87 million of those residents are, I can't read that. Maybe you can read that.
Live in the southeastern United States. This represents a huge consumer market. 44 million residents live in the Caribbean with mega markets in Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Jamaica. 127 million residents in Mexico. 45 million residents in Central America, with mega markets in Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Costa Rica. 86 million residents live in northern sector of South America, including Colombia, Venezuela, Suriname, and the northern section of Brazil. Miami is the perfect hub for the huge potential market of more than 400 million consumers, as Stanley mentioned.
Yeah.
Next.
Okay, and so with that, you know, for your audience as well, we thought it might be a good idea to kind of explain a little bit about the Florida economy, the Florida market. Most people don't fully understand how we operate and you know how we compare to other states. So let me just start by saying that Florida is the third most populous state in the United States after California and Texas. Florida is the third largest. Used to be New York, but we surpassed New York a few years back. We're now at about 23 million people in the state of Florida. This economy is a $1.7 trillion economy. What that means is that if we were a sovereign country, you know, an independent country, we would be the 15th largest economy in the world. That would be on par with Mexico or Singapore. There's a perception out there that the economy is based mostly on tourism and hospitality, which is important, but only accounts for about 15% of our GDP. The bulk of it, especially for South Florida, is in trade and logistics. I would say in Miami-Dade County alone, 1 out of every 4 jobs is tied to trade and logistics. If Miami-Dade County, which is only one of 67 counties within the state of Florida, if Miami-Dade County was a country, it would be the 31st, somewhere between 31 and 34 largest economy in the world. So again, just to show, represent what this means in terms of a market opportunity. Okay, so Florida's market has been booming and it continues to boom. And as I said earlier, Port Miami is the perfect entry point for a lot of goods coming from Latin America and the Caribbean. We are considered the gateway to Latin America and the Caribbean, but these days we are considered more as the gateway across the globe. All right, next. And again, I talked a little bit about the population. You know, I mentioned before, we have 67 counties in the state of Florida. 3 of those counties, which is what we consider South Florida, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, those 3 counties alone represent 7 million. That's a third of the total population is right here in South Florida. Again, that means we're a huge consumer base. And I think for both Latin America and the Caribbean, Port Miami should be their #1 entry point for U.S. market, but also beyond that, as a consolidation point for moving cargo to Europe, to Asia. You know, your audiences should highly consider Port Miami as that entry point. Our gross domestic market in terms of salaries as well, or I should say earnings. The average earning in the state of Florida, or I should say in South Florida, is about $102,000 per household. So huge consumer market. I think the other thing too to kind of keep in mind with Florida is that not just the number of diaspora that's here. So obviously there's an assimilation of of cultures throughout the United States, or I should say throughout the state of Florida, but particularly in South Florida, that welcomes the Latin American community, the Caribbean community. We do business here. A lot of the banks that the Caribbean and Latin America have, they're also here. So it really does become a great opportunity for business to be done here in Florida, in South Florida, vis-a-vis Latin America and the Caribbean. Next. Not to mention, we see an annual visitors of about 143 million visitors coming to the state of Florida. A lot of them come through Miami International Airport for visiting, for stay. Sometimes they're here for 6 months out of the year, 3 months out of the year. A lot of them come here for cruise. As you all know, we are the cruise capital of the world, and that's another huge market. The cruise industry represents about $9 billion a year for the state of Florida. And so this adds to our strength in terms of our economy and contributes to that $1.7 trillion GDP that we have here in the state of Florida. Next. And, Sonda's talked about our key trading partners. As you can see on the left, it's really divided. The way the Port of Miami receives both our imports and exports. I would say 50% of our imports and exports, or total trade, is with Latin America and the Caribbean. The other 30% is typically with Asian markets, and then Europe accounts for about 20%. Oceanic and Africa is still very little in terms of market trade, but we are trying to develop those markets. As you can see, China is still the #1 trading partner, despite the reduction in cargo. And then, of course, you've got a lot of, at least 6 of the Latin American markets that are part of our top trading partners as well. So of all the ports in the state of Florida, Port Miami has what I would consider sort of an even trade in terms of imports and exports. Our exports are just above, our imports are just above our exports, but compared to other ports, we are pretty much even. Next. And speaking of Port Miami in particular, Port Miami generates its own funding. The impact that we have across the community is roughly about $61 billion in economic impact, and that represents about 340,000 jobs, both direct and indirect. The port alone, we have about 360 employees at the port. As some of you may know, we're sort of divided between the cruise and the cargo side. In terms of our revenue, 55% of our revenues comes from the cruise industry, and the other 45% is represented on the cargo side. Next. As we said earlier, last year we saw about 1.9 million TEUs, and that is about 10 million tons. And in total, we had about just under 950 vessels that berthed the Port of Miami. As some of you may know, the Port of Miami is the only port on the East Coast that is a Super Panamax port. The only other port is the Port of Virginia. Those are the only 2 ports that can receive the Super Neo-Panamax ships that are coming out of the Suez and Panama Canal. Of those 945 vessels, about 360 of them were those Super Panamax, Neo-Panamax vessels. Those vessels typically carry somewhere between 13 to 15,000 TEUs. Generally speaking, most of the vessels that come here are somewhere between 6 and 10,000 TEUs. Our direct impact in terms of revenue is about $44 billion at the Port of Miami. Next. And again, we talked about this earlier. When we look over the last 10 years, we've kind of stayed steady at about between 1 and 1.3, 1.4 million TEUs. We do have the capacity to grow as much as 3 million TEUs. We're currently looking to develop a network of inland ports. So very soon you'll hear more about 2 inland ports in Miami-Dade County and 2 other ones that'll be spread out throughout the state of Florida. But we anticipate more cargo moving to and from the Port of Miami, and so we are developing a network of inland ports. Next. And part of the reason why we're able to do all of this is because I think Port Miami was forward-thinking 10 years ago, where other ports were kind of just, doing what they always do. Port Miami was investing in our infrastructure. We've invested in a number of ship-to-shore gantry cranes. In total, we have 13 gantry cranes at Port Miami, 6 of which are used for our Super Panamax vessels. I can't make the second one.
The 50 to 52 foot
Yes,
water drop.
and so the other piece is obviously the infrastructure that we did was that we dredged the channel. So that allows ships that need that depth of about 50 to 52 feet can traverse at Port Miami. We have the shortest nautical miles from the Atlantic Ocean. It's only 2.5 miles, whereas if you go to Savannah, when it takes about 18 miles to get to the actual port of Savannah. So that's a huge benefit for us. 10 years ago, we also built a tunnel that allows trucks to leave the port and get right on I-95 to head north, never having to see a traffic light. So these are some of the important benefits of moving cargo through Port Miami. The other piece that's important to also recognize is that because we're such a huge consumer market, no matter the mode of transportation, whether it's by air, by truck, by rail, a lot of these goods come into the state, but then they go back pretty empty. And so the opportunity for Latin America and the Caribbean is to move cargo through Port Miami because the backhaul rates are extremely cheap. I would say they're actually half the cost of cargo coming into the state of Florida. So it's a huge opportunity to move cargo through Port Miami as backhaul rates are 50% cheaper than cargo coming into state Florida. Next. And I think the other piece that's really important as well is that we invested in on-dock rail. And so when your goods come to the Port of Miami, if that is your choice, we can get that right on rail and move it right up the state. Florida East Coast Railway is the rail company for the state of Florida that then connects with CSX and the other Class A rail lines. So huge opportunity there. Right currently, rail is only about just under 10% of all of the cargo that we move. Most of it is still moved by truck, but there's a huge opportunity to move cargo by rail. Next. And the important thing about moving it by rail is that we can get to 70 million of our 320 million population within 1 to 4 business days if you move it by rail. So once it gets to Port Miami, we can get that on rail right away, and your cargo moves to anywhere on the East Coast within 4 days. And that's a huge advantage for Port Miami. Next. Again, I think the other thing that is really important to shipping lines, BCOs, or the big retailers is where those distribution centers are located, the concentration of warehouses that we have here. And Saunders will talk a little bit more about foreign trade zones and the opportunity there, especially as it relates to tariffs. But here distribution centers are popping up left and right. Amazon, actually last week we just visited one of their largest facilities here. It's just over 1 million square feet of warehouses where they have all of their robotics. Walmart has the largest or the busiest Walmart in the entire United States. It's right here in Florida in the Doral community. Publix and Kroger, they all have huge retail and online. So the reason that this is important is because the shipping lines and freight forwarders, custom brokers, when they're looking at the different ports to move cargo, they often look at concentration of warehouses, distribution centers. And so the state of Florida is huge when it comes to distribution centers and warehouses. Next.
Okay, when we talk about with the tariffs, so what are the best solution is the foreign trade zone. So Stanley and I are the administrators of the foreign trade zone 281. So basically with a foreign trade zone, with all the talks you're hearing about the tariffs, the foreign trade zone allows you to purchase your products and put it in a designated warehouse that's designated a foreign trade zone. You would not get charged any taxes as long as you export that product to Trinidad or anywhere outside of the United States. So let me repeat that. With all the tariffs conversation happening with the various countries, you would not pay any money on tariffs or taxes, duties, as long as you place the product within a foreign trade zone and you export it outside of the United States. You have no time limit on when you have to export it, as long as you keep it within the foreign trade zone. So we oversee the foreign trade zone 281, which is in Miami-Dade County. It's about a 30 to 60 day process in terms of application from start to finish, and Custom Border Patrol come out, inspect the property, get you a software where you input all of the products in there, and they kind of monitor it. So basically, it's a lot of different advantages as we talk about the foreign trade zone. The state of Florida has 20 foreign trade zone grantee 4 within Miami-Dade County alone, and we are in Miami-Dade County 281. Miami-Dade County combined foreign trade zone represents about 150 foreign trade zone operator sites. Port of Miami is considered a grantee. The operators are the actual foreign trade zone, the importer or exporter, whoever the company that actually register the company within the foreign trade zone. Port of Miami Foreign Trade Zone 281 and Greater Miami Chambers Foreign Trade Zone 32 are committed to increasing international trade through Miami. With 150 licensed foreign trade zones in Miami-Dade County, processing cargo is more efficient and saves customers millions of dollars each year.
Yeah, and I would just add that we're the only county, again, we have 67 counties in the state, but we're the only county that the entire county is a foreign trade zone.
That's correct.
It used to be that it was only a certain area, but the mayor has moved to make the entire county a foreign trade zone. And as Sanla said, the big difference is that with as an FTZ, as a foreign trade zone, you can keep those products in your warehouse indefinitely. There's no time limit. You decide when to re-export it to avoid paying any duties, taxes, or tariffs for that matter. Now, for bonded facilities, because there are a lot of people that are interested in bonded facilities, there is also an opportunity to keep those products in your warehouse. But the big difference is that with bonded facilities, you have to re-export it within 5 years, or they will impose those duties and taxes. So that is the big difference. They're both very good, but with foreign trade zones, you're allowed to keep that indefinitely. And this speaks to why Port Miami is such an opportunity for companies that are looking to do business either in the state of Florida, in the United States, and beyond. I think we have one of the highest concentration of freight forwarders, custom brokers, warehouses. These are some of the sort of names that you typically recognize in terms of third-party logistics providers that are here. And so Miami becomes a huge opportunity for companies that are looking to do business in the United States, in the state of Florida, in South Florida, and in Miami-Dade County more particularly.
Next.
Okay, and that wraps up our presentation. We're here for any questions you might have. And as Songa said before, what we did was we put together a list of frequently asked questions, because I know that we're limited in time. And so we will send that to your facilitator and make sure that he then sends it out to everybody for those frequently asked questions.
Thank you for that presentation, Sonia and Lee. I do have a couple of questions that I would like to close the session off. Before I close the session off, to get an idea from you as you talk about foreign trade zones. And what are the compliance challenges associated with the FTA? And how do exporters from Trinidad and Tobago typically overcome them?
Okay, you broke up. Could you please repeat it?
And what are the compliance challenges associated with those foreign trade zones? And how do the exporters from the Caribbean region typically overcome them?
Compliance issues.
Okay, yeah, right. And basically, the compliance issue will really be on the operator. And so when you share an interest, I send you the application, you give me the appropriate paperwork, and the compliance is really through a Custom Border Patrol. It's just a matter of inputting all of the products within that foreign trade zone, within that designation. Once you input it in there, at any given time, Custom Border, they can do an audit as long as whatever you put in is actually in the warehouse. So it's basically the responsibility lies on the actual operator to be truthful in whatever that they say it's in there, whatever quantity, it's actually in there. And at any given time, you just have to be open and willing to open up the books when Custom Border Patrol comes in and knocks.
And what do they track? They track value, they track
the value, the goods, the quantity of the actual product, and actually where it's actually coming from.
Okay.
So every year, the operator would have to complete an annual report, and that goes to me. And the annual report basically wants to know how many jobs you created within the last 365 days. You know, how many products that you brought in, the value, and actually the region or the country that is actually coming from.
Okay. This one is about tariffs and trade policy. Have you guys seen, are there specific categories of products from the Caribbean that have become more competitive due to the global tariff shifts?
I haven't seen any as of yet. I mean, we highlighted steel, aluminum. We highlighted some of the more prevalent because with that, they look at, I guess, the quantity that actually comes in. That's what kind of sort of, stands out based on the quantity. So we haven't, as of yet, we haven't seen anything from the Caribbean in terms of products that's on the actual list, but we do monitor it because it changes so frequently.
Yeah. And I would just say the other important thing too is that whether it's Latin America or the Caribbean, maybe outside of maybe Brazil, Colombia and Ecuador on the flower side, we do import quite a bit of flowers from them. But when we look at Latin America and the Caribbean, it's really they import more than they export, and so I think for us, it's really about. We're looking at, for example, fruits and vegetables is huge here. Perishables in general. I mean, not just fruits and vegetables. We're talking about cosmetics. We're talking any kind of beverage that requires refrigeration. We're talking about flowers. All those perishable commodities are huge for us from Latin America and the Caribbean. I know that the Caribbean also imports a lot of beef and meat and chicken and a lot of the dairy products, so that continues. But in terms of a reduction in some of these commodities, we're not seeing it that much. Obviously, with tariffs, everybody's kind of holding a little bit of a holding pattern. But certainly, the Caribbean was the least affected, thankfully, from a tariff from a tariff perspective.
Okay, and to close it off, what future trade or tariff trends should the Caribbean exporters be monitoring over the next 12 to 24 months? What are you guys seeing?
I would say, I mean, you have we listed the various agencies, about 8 of the agencies. You can actually get on there and subscribe to the agencies, and they'll actually send out every time a new order come out. They actually send it to you. So I'll certainly encourage the attendees to say, for one of the enforcement agencies was the U.S. Trade Representative. When you go on their website, you can subscribe to the actual newsletter. They'll keep you abreast of all the various orders that comes out, and you can kind of sort of keep yourself updated in that shape and form.
There's some kind of like a CMS.
Correct. Yes. Correct. Correct.
CMS message. So the links that we're going to share with you.
Correct.
It allows you to go in there and subscribe to their newsletter, for them to send you messages on a regular basis. When you open those links, you'll see all of those agencies are in there as well.
And then I like to encourage them to, get a subscription with JOC, Journal of Commerce, so that's very good. You have Lodestar as well as it's very good. On social media, all of the agencies, you can actually follow them on social media, and once you follow them, you can stay abreast daily, because the agencies are very active on social media, because again, this is a global problem. It's a global issue, so they can certainly, I encourage them, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, whatever social media platform of their choice, all of the enforcement agencies are actually on there. So I'll certainly encourage them to keep up with the agencies that way. And I mean, I'll even encourage them to take a trip to Washington. Because we have offices in DC, so we're very proactive. When it comes to just keeping track of the various laws that actually kind of sort of comes out, and we try to stay ahead of it. If it affects us, we like to encourage people to be proactive. Write those letters to the different legislators, and share your story on how this impacts you, whether it's positive or negative, so they could actually know. So I'll certainly wrap it up and kind of certainly encourage them to do that.
And please think of us as a resource and reference as well. So if any of your audience would like a one-on-one with us as well, we're happy to do that. It's really hard to kind of talk in more granular terms, because we don't know exactly what the needs are out there. But if someone needs to have a one-on-one with us, we're happy to schedule a Zoom call or a Teams call to go over any specific issues that they might have.
And even if they're ever see themselves traveling in South Florida, we'll be more than happy to host them at the port, do a port tour. And if they have a specific interest about a commodity and or a country, we'll be more than happy to help print some of those data and information out to them.
All right, perfect. Well, I think many of the attendees today would be taking you guys up on that invitation to visit the facility. But I'd like to thank you guys for your contribution today as we wrap up this session of Market Access Series. I'd like to thank everyone all the attendees for joining us. This for our second session of Market Access Series in partnership between ANCHAM, PNT, and Trade Trek USA. It has been my pleasure again to have you guys with us. And we appreciate your time and the active participation in what we hope was a highly informative and engaging session. A very special thank you to the speakers, Mr. Sones Martin. He has always been a good friend and a partner in terms of trade. Very influential across Miami. He's the Vice President of Global Trade and Business Development at Port Miami, and Mr. Stanley Rigo, who I have had the pleasure of meeting today, the Intermodal Cargo Development Officer at the Port Miami, for sharing your insights. They were very valuable, and I hope that the attendees have been able to take away some information to position them for success as they look to increase exports into the U.S. I'd also like to extend a sincere thanks to Ms. Anna Henderson, President of AmCham, Trinidad and Tobago. Congratulations to Ms. Henderson on her new appointment. Mr. Narad Tawari, CEO of AmCham, Trinidad and Tobago, who unfortunately is in the middle of reviews and had to drop off as they call before the end. But Mr. Tawari has been avid supporter from the beginning of this program. And so thank him for his continued support and the vision in making this partnership possible. It wouldn't be a reality without their commitment and empowering local businesses and advancing trade opportunities for the entire region. To Melissa Peer, Senior Trade and Policy Specialist, who's on the call, and who has been a sounding board for myself in terms of deciding what the next topics would be and moving this program forward. Thank you very much, Melissa. And to the entire AmCham Trinidad and Tobago Secretariat team, thank you for all of the behind-the-scenes coordination to ensure that today's session ran smoothly, and your dedication and support is truly deeply appreciated. So as we continue this journey together, I want to share a preview of what's coming up on the Market Access series. We do have plans to have our upcoming session in 2 months. Every 2 months, we will be having one of these sessions. We will be expanding to include more global markets. So do look forward to presentations that would include speakers that would range from Asia, Africa, and other emerging markets. And we'll be joined by those expert speakers going forward. Details on those dates and registrations will be shared shortly via AmCham Trinidad and Tobago and TradeTrack's communication channels, so please stay tuned. And on behalf of the entire TradeTrack USA team, myself, Risha, Justin, I want to express our heartfelt gratitude. We are thrilled to be partnering with AmCham Trinidad and Tobago on this important initiative, and we remain fully committed to supporting Caribbean brands, especially those in the food and beverage sector, as they expand into new markets and bring the richness of our culture and innovation to a global audience. We believe that MAS will serve as a powerful tool for business transformation, capacity building, and long-term growth. To all AmCham TNT members, this platform is for you. I reiterate that. So let's make the most of it together. Our friends at Port Miami, thank you very much. They have offered themselves as resources, guys, and so too the team at TradeTrack USA. Please don't hesitate to reach out. This session will be shared on YouTube in 2 days. You guys should all receive an email with the link, allowing you to then take it in on your own time, because a lot of valuable information was shared today. So thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.